Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon also to all my fellow panelists who are with me today. I salute them as good friends from previous work, and I'm delighted that I can talk to you about some recent work the OECD has been doing on employee engagement in the civil service. I have to say that we've prepared a few slides with very important results on this topic. I hope that they are useful, and I will not comment on them page by page, but you will find the background information to what I will have to say now. I'm very sorry that we couldn't make it. None of my team nor myself could be with you because we have our important committee meetings in Paris. Nevertheless, it's a great pleasure to contribute to this debate. First of all, I would say that it's very important that when we talk about employment and engagement of employees in the public sector, it is clear that the last 8-9 years have seen quite dramatic changes, both in the number of employees in different member countries, but also the payment and other conditions for the civil service being either frozen or simply reduced. No surprise certainly when you see that about 2/3 of our member countries have cut quite dramatically the labor force. No surprise that that has an impact on staff morale. We found that there is a clearly negative impact on the trust of the civil service in the organization itself. It is true that it also concerns a loss of trust in the management of these organizations. But interestingly enough, it also, of course, means that we can see traces of this loss translating into losses of quality in service delivery, and finally, even losses of citizens in governments. This is a long chain of arguments, and it is clear that we would need to do more to make these links also quantitatively viable. But definitely there are these changes. Now, we could say, is this bad that there is a reduction of the workforce? Is it bad that there is change in the compensation? Not necessarily. And I think it's important for an open discussion to understand that when these reductions take place, who is leaving and who is staying behind. So it's not so much a question of the size of the labor force, but it's a question of the conditions under which the ones that stay actually will continue to contribute. I think it is reasonable to assume that very often the best ones are the ones that are the first to leave, just because they, being good people, because they find employment elsewhere. That's a hypothesis, and I think one would have to look carefully at each country to see whether this link that I'm making here, a bit perhaps too simple, has turned out to be reflected in reality. But I would say it's a good working hypothesis. Now that has led many countries, I would say, to think about what is it that they can say about rebuilding this trust of the civil service in the organizations, making service delivery better again, and increasing the trust of citizens in the civil service. One way to do it is to look at the engagement of civil service systematically through employment or employee surveys. We have seen that in some of the countries, the US, UK, Australia, in fact, systematically this policy and this instrument is applied. Very interestingly to see that these countries, together with a few others, have actually rebuilt the trust levels, the engagement, the commitment, thanks to a very precise and a very regular survey that would give them quantitative information for management decisions and, of course, for organizational decisions. What I'm saying here is these surveys turn out to be a very valuable instrument, but very often they are limited to the national perspective. We in the OECD, in our new publication, we have been looking at ways to make it more comparable. And that, of course, means that when you look at results from different countries, they have to be built on similar indicators, similar methodologies. That's what we have been trying and will continue to do. Very important to remember that these are instruments that are not, by no means, already employed by all countries, but perhaps what is more, not all countries share the results with the public. Again, an issue of national preferences, but I think in the sense of an open government, it's very important that data which reflect the state of affairs in the civil service are accessible, because that also means not only that citizens know about it, but they will also be in a position to much better understand why these cuts, why compensations, changes, why all those are having an impact on what they get from the government through public services. So I will conclude here by just saying we would like to continue to work on this subject with you, with everybody who is interested, and I think we will need to make a contribution to a fresh look at what changes in the civil service actually mean for both internal organization, management decision, but also for service delivery, public service delivery, quality of these deliveries, and finally, very important in the current uncertain economic and social environment, what it means for the citizens' trust in government. Thank you very much.